Being a profitable sports bettor is not about trusting your gut. And if you're actually one of those kind of sports bettors, you're trying to rely on your sports knowledge to predict the future. And if you actually try to rely on a strategy as such, you're not going to be profitable long term. But guys, do not worry. In this video, we're going to learn exactly how to become a profitable sports bettor by not actually relying on your sports knowledge. Instead, I'm going to take you down a journey of learning the math behind the sports books and how to beat them. My name is Matt Downs, owner of Daily Grind Fantasy Sports. I actually started my sports betting journey about 5 years ago, and I too was a casual sports bettor, just randomly picking lines, trusting my gut, and I quickly learned that that's not the long-term profitable strategy. I then started down the path of actually learning the math behind the sports books and educating myself. Now, I'm proud to say that I can consistently beat the sports books year over year, and my full-time job is teaching others exactly how to do so. Now, let's first go over sports betting and how it's perceived through the media, especially on social media. Sports betting is not a get-rich-quick scheme, further meaning that this is a long, drawn-out process, and you can be a profitable bettor by finding edges within the market. The process is this: find the edge, the mathematical edge, and bet that edge many times over the long term. And these mathematical edges don't just exist in major sports. They exist and they look different across many different leagues and markets. Now, these mathematical edges that I'm referring to that exist in the market just simply boil down to simple probability. To further explain these mathematical edges, let's first go over an example. Let's take a coin. We know that if you're flipping a coin, there's a 50% chance it lands on tails and a 50% chance it lands on heads. If you were to flip that coin 1,000 times, there's an extremely high probability that that lands somewhere close to 500 times on tails and 500 times on heads. Now let's take this a step further and let's put $1 on each time this coin lands on heads over the long term. Now there's an extreme chance that you're probably just gonna end up wasting your time because you're either gonna barely break even or lose a little bit, because that's the law of large averages. The more times you flip this coin, the less of an edge you have, especially if the percent odds to hit are exactly 50%. Now let's throw another betting example into the mix. What if I only got back 95 cents for each time that this landed on heads, but the probability that this lands on heads we know is still 50%. And that's exactly how sportsbooks work. They take your money over the long term because they know that the juice that they add into the lines, the price that they add into the lines, is going to beat their sports bettors. The more bets that their sports bettors make, the more edge that that sportsbook has over their sports bettors. Now let's take this exact same coin example and throw a little bit of a curveball. Let's hypothetically say that the standard coin that we're flipping is now a weighted coin. In other words, let's imagine that landing on heads is now a 55% chance to tails is 45% chance. Now you're probably feeling a lot more confident to bet $1 for this to land on heads in the long term, because now there's a 55% chance that this is going to land on heads as opposed to a 50-50 chance. And one last time, let's now throw another curveball into this example. Let's say that I only get 95 cents back for every $1, but I can still bet on this weighted coin of heads, this 55% chance. Since I only get back 95 cents for every $1 that I bet, but now my weighted coin is hitting at a 55% rate, my edge is still 0%. And why is that? Because price matters. How valuable is that sports bet when you compare it back to the actual probability of it hitting? Let's go back to my weighted coin example. If I really do have a 55% chance of that coin landing on head, I then have positive expected value for every $1 that I bet on heads. Now, my positive expected value in that exact example is 5%, and at no point am I saying it's actually going to end up at 5%. I could flip that coin 1,000 times, and it could end up only hitting heads 525 times. And then the actual value I'm getting out of that is going to be 2.5%, right? And that's the way sports betting works. It's when you make the bet, you're observing the percent odds to hit while also taking into consideration the price. And then over the long term, you have positive expected value. And I know what you're wondering. You're sitting here wondering how we can calculate probability on sports bets. And while there's no right or wrong way to do this, there is a more efficient way to do this. Now, if you're like me and a sports fan, your first instinct might be to calculate these probabilities by yourself. What's the probability that the Kansas City Chiefs beat the Denver Broncos, or the LA Lakers to beat the Sacramento Kings? And what you shouldn't do, as I said earlier in this video, is try to predict those outcomes. Instead, you should rely on the countless markets that have already done all this research and poured millions and millions of dollars into doing this and have proven to make money long term. And the irony behind everything that we're talking about here is that we're actually relying on the sportsbooks themselves to set those accurate projections and those probabilities. And observing the sportsbooks' projections and prices associated with those sports bets becomes the first step to finding positive expected value within the market. Now, to help position this in a way so that you guys can understand, let's now relate this to a real life example. I love using the car dealership example. Most people who have sports bet have also purchased a vehicle, right? So let's hypothetically say that you go car searching and you go to a car dealership where you can then buy a car for $25,000 there, go to car dealership B, and it also happens to be the same price, right? But let's say you go to car dealership C and you notice that car is $24,500. And then you go to car dealership D and then that price is $24,000. And last but not least, you head over to car dealership E and you see a price tag of that exact same car that you've been looking for at $20,000. Now, this example is extremely logical and a bit extreme. You never find these kinds of price discrepancies in markets, right? But again, logically, you can see here that car dealership E has no idea what they're doing in terms of a price tag when comparing it back to the market. And the only market knowledge you have is from those car dealerships that you were in before. So now, how does this translate to the sports betting market? Consider the individual sports books like car dealerships. They independently set their price tags and do the market research themselves. Whether they're taking sports bets from sharp sports bettors, setting the lines themselves, changing those price tags based on the amount of money coming in on the over or under of certain sports bettors, or even all of the above. By observing the price and the projection at various different sports books, we have the confidence to assume that these sports books provide us with the sharpest projections that we have to compare against other various sports books, the exact same way that we just did with a car dealership. So now that we know that the sports betting market provides a lot of data that we can then compare against other sports books and find those mispriced values, the next question becomes, how do we do that? And that's exactly why I started Daily Grind Fantasy Sports, to provide a tool that can then show the probability, compare it using real sportsbooks data against other various fantasy platforms or sportsbooks. Think of Daily Grind Fantasy Sports like Zillow for house searching, or Cars.com for looking for cars. If you log on to Zillow, you have an entire market, even a section that you can observe various price tags on different houses. And then you can quickly identify what other houses are mispriced based on similar houses within that region. Same thing with Cars.com. You can search up what car you want and then compare it across the entire nation, even the world, to find the most mispriced car that you're looking for. And technically, you can do this a manual way. You can log on to DraftKings Sportsbook, you can log on to Prizepicks.com, Underdog Fantasy, and you can manually compare these projections. However, we know how the housing market works. We know how Cars.com works. The second that somebody sees a mispriced house, they jump on it immediately. The same way when I see a player prop on Prizepicks.com using my tool as being mispriced, I immediately jump on it. That player prop value then goes away because Prizepicks knows that if they keep it up, they're gonna lose money because other sharp sports bettors are gonna have access to these similar tools and also take advantage. And I'm just speaking from experience here. Sometimes the answer is not to manually compare these sports books, and it's actually to grab access to the most efficient tools on the market. Depending on what state you reside in, there's going to be multiple sportsbooks that are legal in your area and also various fantasy platforms that are legal within your state. On DGFantasy.com, you're actually going to be given percent odds to hit based on the sportsbook market, and it's going to show you that weighted coin probability. And better yet, it's going to immediately give you the most valuable props to take advantage of. And if your state does legalize sports betting, I have another platform for you. And that platform is Oddsjam.com, where it does essentially the exact same thing and compares sports books, and it shows you the most valuable bet for every single league that they have access to. Be sure to sign up using whatever tool using code MATT for 35% off your first month. Hopefully what you take away from this video is that you too can be a sharp sports bettor, and you can actually make money sports betting, whether it be on fantasy apps or sports books. And it's not through predicting the future. Instead, it's through calculated mathematical advantages that you're able to take advantage of every second of every day. And calculating those small mathematical advantages doesn't just come from the strategy explained in this video, otherwise known as line comparing. There's many other strategies. Some of those strategies include the correlation strategy, the middling strategy, arbitrage. The list goes on and on. And if you're stumbling across this channel for the very first time from this video, I have another one for you. And I promise you that we have a ton of other videos to help kickstart your journey to becoming a profitable sports bettor.